The idea of caring for an old woman or dealing with high school kids, what a nuisance. There's no room for a baby here, right? You should leave.
I was a teenager, jerked around by my selfish brother and his wife. But in an unexpected turn, my life changed for the better. My name is Riley. Lately, at 40, it seems like gravity's winning the battle. My cheeks sagging into a slight bulldog look. Oh dear, is it hard to be against aging? However, it reminds me, my mother never really had sagging skin or wrinkles. Wish I had inherited that. I think she was quite beautiful. After divorcing my father over his affair when I was young, she raised my older brother Alexander and me on her own, until one day, suddenly she collapsed with a brain disease. Alexander was a freshman in high school, and I was in middle school. My mother woke up, but was paralyzed from the waist down and struggled to speak. She mostly seemed lost in a daze. That's when my trials began. After learning about her condition, Alexander quickly said, "I thought, we'll support her together." But Alexander said,
I can't handle caregiving. Mom wouldn't want a man taking care of her, right? I have to study, so you handle it all.
and he just dumped it all on me. As a middle schooler, I had no idea how to care for someone. I couldn't even imagine the workload or how hard it would be, just felt anxious about the future. Could I really take care of her all by myself? Not long ago, I was just a kid spoiled by her. The only adult I could turn to was my father, who had abandoned us, and I didn't even know how to reach him. I learned for the first time that she hadn't even received child support from her husband. Even if I could contact him, he would have probably abandoned us again. Knowing the hardships she faced working day and night pained me. Moreover, she was young and ineligible for care insurance, so we couldn't get proper care services. Though we managed living expenses with welfare, there was hardly any external support. There might have been better systems in place, but as a middle schooler, I couldn't understand the bureaucratic paperwork. I just followed what the hospital advised, processing paperwork as told. Yet Alexander turned a blind eye to me, leaving not only mother's care, but all household chores to me. Living in the same house, he enjoyed leisure, sleeping whenever he wanted, while I gave up studying hard and friendships, often sleepless, due to caring for my mother. Thus, my teenage years, dedicated to household chores and caring for her, were thrust upon me by Alexander. It happened the year after my mother fell ill.
Suddenly, I'm dropping out of high school.
Alexander announced. I couldn't help but hope he might assist with the mother's care. I was in my second year of middle school, needed to study harder. I needed help. But what he said next was unbelievable.
Got a girl pregnant. I'm marrying her and we'll live here.
What?
Turns out he had impregnated a classmate, dropping out to raise the child in our home. A person who wouldn't even care for his own mother. How could he care for a baby? A child making a child? That's what it seemed like. I protested loudly.
I don't want to live with you.
But
Don't worry, I won't bother you.
he just laughed it off with a nonchalant attitude. Of course, I couldn't believe those words. For the first time, I wanted to escape. But back then, I was powerless. A month later, Alexander's girlfriend Stella moved in. At first,
I know it's tough at home. I'll help.
she was saying nice things to me. But as expected, within 3 days,
I can't strain myself because of the baby.
she had me fetching even a cup of coffee. It's no surprise, considering she chose to be Alexander's wife. The high school dropout stayed home mostly, doing nothing for my mother. When I rushed home to care for her,
What's for dinner?
that's how they would ask me. Moreover, at night they'd make noise, robbing me of my precious sleep. It's no wonder I lost 10 pounds after Stella arrived. Eventually, Alexander started working part-time at a grocery store, reducing their late-night disturbances. But then Stella's baby was born. Now it was the baby's cries all night. Honestly, even being told she was my niece, I couldn't find her cute, given my feelings towards Alexander and Stella. I might sound cold, but back then, I was struggling with my studies, trying not to take out my frustration on my mother. I was still a child with no capacity to adore Alexander's child. Despite being on the edge, I managed to get into high school, thanks to my teacher's extra help. Not the school I wanted, but the closest one with lower standards, though. Not ideal, but better than not going at all. The money saved from Alexander dropping out of high school was used for my tuition. Maybe that's one thing to thank him for. I believed things would get easier once I started high school. That's what I hoped. Then, right before starting high school one day,
Hey Riley, how about this place?
Bruh?
Stella showed me a pamphlet for a condominium. I thought for a moment they were moving out now that they had a child. However, it was all for single living.
This one's close to a grocery store. Good for a girl like you, near a busy street. Safer.
Still, I don't plan on moving. I don't plan on moving.
Huh?
She asked back with a smile, but her eyes weren't laughing. I felt pressured as if I had no choice.
Okay, I understand.
I couldn't just say we should consider my mother.
Just take her with you.
That's impossible.
I have nowhere to go.
I'm helping you look for a place. Just find a part-time job or something.
That's terrible.
Terrible? You're in high school now, perfectly able to work. Living at home is just pampering yourself. Pampering. You're in high school, time to move out? Why do I have to listen to you?
I argued back, tears in my eyes.
I am Alexander's wife. I'm his family. I've got a baby, but I've got an old woman to care for, and a high schooler at the same time. How could you deal with such a harsh situation? Get out quickly.
Before I knew it, Stella grabbed my collar and threw me out. Then Alexander roughly dragged my mother out here, handing her to me. I couldn't believe these were the actions of parents.
Then she kicked my mother's wheelchair and threw my school bag at me. See ya.
And closed the door.
Wait. Please wait.
I yelled, banging on the door, but they didn't come out. I was really being thrown out. That's when I realized.
What's the matter, young lady?
The voice came from Harris, the old man living across the street.
Mr. Harris,
He asked what happened.
I've been thrown out with my disabled mother.
But I couldn't say. It felt embarrassing, somehow shameful.
Come on in for some coffee.
He then gestured for me to come over with a smile. Though I was hesitant to enter a neighbor's home so quickly, it started raining, and I couldn't leave my mother out, so I gratefully accepted.
Harris gave us towels and warm coffee.
Noticing my tension, he made small talk, asking about my favorite things to help me relax. Eventually, I was kicked out by Alexander and his wife. I opened up.
What will you do now? Do you have somewhere to go?
I don't know.
How about I offer you a place to live?
No, we can't. We don't have the money.
Oh my, I wouldn't take money from a young lady like you. It's for free?
That can't be right.
It's okay. Usually, old folks have extra money, and young people should take advantage when they can. I'll even cover your tuition. We can hire someone to care for your mother.
Why would you do this for us?
Don't you remember?
Remember what?
I used to be the janitor at your elementary school.
I'm sorry, I don't remember.
No wonder. You were only in 2nd grade, and I didn't have gray hair then. You found me behind the school suffering from chest pain and called for help.
Now that he mentioned it, I vaguely remembered.
After that, I quit and moved here and realized you were my neighbor.
But just for that, you can't possibly owe me this much.
No, you see, if you hadn't found me quickly, I could have ended up like your mother. I'm really grateful.
I couldn't believe it, but Mr. Harris's eyes weren't deceitful like Alexander's. He genuinely seemed to care about us.
You might be wary of a stranger offering you a home. So how about living with my granddaughter? She's in college and studying to be a caregiver. She could help.
That sounded reassuring. I didn't want to live with anyone like Alexander again. It was a tough decision, but honestly I had no other choice. I decided to trust Harris and accept his offer. The house he provided was a mansion, the likes of which I'd never seen, and it was wheelchair accessible.
His granddaughter, Scarlett, said, "I was planning to live alone for college, but thought it might be lonely." She happily agreed to live with us and even shared the caregiving and household chores.
I couldn't help but think, have I come to heaven? It was such a blissful life. Not only did Harris make it possible for me to attend high school, but he also offered to pay for my college, allowing me to pursue an education I thought was impossible.
She was truly like a sister to me, supporting me through my studies. She helped me study for college because I could hardly attend high school classes.
Thanks to her, I was accepted into a university with much higher standards. Later, I learned Harris was from a family that owned a large corporation, involved in everything from food to caregiving services. He had been a janitor as a post-retirement hobby. One day I asked him, "How can I repay you?"
He suggested, "Why don't you work at one of our caregiving companies?"
It didn't feel like repaying him, but he said, "Seeing you work hard would be the best repayment for me." So I accepted the job at his company. Thanks to my job, I was able to earn enough to afford outside care for my mother and live in a wheelchair-friendly house.
Furthermore, he said, "I want you to meet my grandson, Lucas."
He introduced me to Lucas, who was set to eventually take over the caregiving business I worked at. Initially, I hadn't planned on it, but I was drawn to him, a year older than me, and his inclusive nature. We started dating and eventually married.
He confessed, "I had planned for you two to get together from the start."
He said that when we announced our marriage, now we're truly family.
"Now we're truly family."
He said with a twinkle in his eye. Though I was not fortunate with my real family, aside from my mother. I remember being happy to have found a family in that way. My understanding, husband agreed to live with my mother. My in-laws were very kind, and we were blessed with 2 children, leading a peaceful life until one day.
What?
Lucas handed me a resume, and there he was, aged but unmistakably Alexander.
It is Alexander. He would never do that. I don't know. Hey, what if I conduct the interview?
He grinned at my suggestion. On the day of the interview, Alexander appeared in a suit, but his shirt was wrinkled and untucked. He didn't look like someone ready to work.
Please take a seat.
He complied, and our eyes met for a moment.
Riley, long time no see.
I smiled, speaking to my startled brother.
Why are you here?
I'm the interviewer. Why are you here? I thought you despised caregiving.
I love caring for the elderly, you know?
Lies, after what you did to my mother and me.
I was young. Please, Riley.
He whispered, but then suddenly shouted to beg.
What's all about?
I've got no other choice. Please hire me.
What do you mean?
He exploded with emotion.
I've been unemployed since my part-time factory job in my 30s. Stella says she can't support someone who only eats and does nothing. She started despising me when our child began daycare. I think she's seeing someone else, but she's all I have. If I don't get a job, she'll leave me for good.
Alexander, a grown man, broke down and cried right there, seemingly seeking pity. I won't let him forget what he did to us. That's all.
Surprised by my response, he said, "How can you be so cold after hearing my misfortune? I was just a student when you and your family threw me out. I managed with minimal welfare while taking care of you all.
That's different.
Maybe you were fired because you're the kind of person who easily abandons family. Perhaps you lacked something essential for the job."
Silenced by my words, he just trembled.
Did you ever help with the kids or housework? Or were you just lazing around?
He seemed shocked, probably because I hit the nail on the head.
No wonder you're not treated like a human. Walruses are cute, but a husband like that is just annoying. Stella probably didn't find another man, she just grew to dislike you. And I can see why from this conversation.
He had nothing to say, just shaking.
Sorry, but a company can't hire someone who'd kick out your own mother and sister. We're not that desperate.
What?
You're not getting it? You're not hired. No one with 15 job changes like yours could be natural.
His resume showed short stints at each job, likely due to being fired. He's always been self-centered, unfit for teamwork or considerate work. Indeed, even during this interview, his selfishness was evident.
I mean, I only have caregiving jobs left.
Thought so. Don't worry, I'll spread the word in our affiliates not to hire you.
With a smile, I said, "Please do not do such a thing."
Please.
And Alexander apologized again.
That's non-negotiable for the elderly's safety. And actually, I'm not really an interviewer. The real interviews ended long ago, and we've already chosen someone. You were never going to be hired. I just gave you a fake schedule. So, no matter what, you won't be hired. Sorry about that.
I grabbed his collar and threw him out like he once did to me.
Goodbye.
And with a smile, I waved goodbye. He tried to re-enter the room, but Luca's subordinate, who was standing by outside, threatened. "If you make any more noise, I'll call the police." And they escorted him out of the building. That was the last battle with Alexander. Afterward, he sent a letter to my company. He couldn't find work and was divorced by Stella. The letter begged for help and a job. Typical of his self-centeredness, I ignored it. He doesn't deserve help after trampling on my mother and me. I hope he learns from being on the receiving end of hardship. Meanwhile, I continue to live a peaceful life. All thanks to Harris, who took in my mother and me. He is aging, his legs growing weaker, but I still visit him regularly. My middle school children also adore him, often visiting him on their own without my knowledge. This spring, we took my mother and Harris for a picnic at a nearby lake. We're planning a summer trip next year. And the year after, I want to create many more wonderful memories, making up for my difficult childhood. Despite those hardships, I'm glad to have been born. I'm grateful for meeting those people. I'm happy now,